It's great to be back on a stage in Melbourne. Some of my team know just exactly how many different stages we've been on in the last couple of weeks. It's nice to have got up this morning and not gone to the airport. I want to welcome Sam on stage. Sam and I have got to know each other through a really important journey that OPP have been on, really on behalf of Victoria. And Sam, can you introduce your role and just, I guess, introduce to this audience, who are not all public sector, the role that OPP places in the system of justice in Victoria?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Cal. So I'm Sam Jones. I'm the Executive Director of Corporate Services at the OPP. So I'll just talk a bit about what the OPP is and then a bit about my role. So we're an independent statutory authority. We prosecute serious crime on behalf of the Victorian community. So anything that's heard in the higher jurisdiction court, so the county or Supreme Court, we prosecute. So things like murders, serious aggravated burglaries, and serious drug trafficking or serious sexual offending. So there's quite a level of complexity to not undersell it in the work that we do. And my role in relation to the Appian project was to be the project sponsor to drive a digital transformation journey for the OPP, which replaced a lot of very old bespoke legacy systems, and I think that's been a bit of a theme here today, with a low-code system that could automate our workflows and integrate with the other systems across the justice sector.
So Sam, tell us a little bit about what were the drivers for the project. Why now, and why on earth did it need to be done?
Yeah, sure. So there were a few business or operational drivers, and I've touched on one. It was an old legacy system, which was just too much of a risk to not think about replacing. There were also a lot of disparate systems at the OPP, and when we did the discovery phase, we uncovered a lot of shadow systems as well, things that we didn't even know. People were using spreadsheets to collect data, access databases that people had set up 15, 20 years ago that they were still using to manage some of the casework that they did. So there was a real strong business driver. But there was also the opportunity to improve business outcomes and also improve the experience of our users. I spoke about the complexity in the work that we do. A lot of our staff are exposed to quite traumatic content in the work that we do. There's a heavy cognitive load that comes with engaging with victims and witnesses and the vicarious trauma that you experience there. So we really needed to provide a seamless, frictionless system to users that just did what they needed to do and not have them navigate around several disparate systems and not have to switch between our document management system and our case management system to just do fundamental things like seeking approval from Crown prosecutors for particular decisions in cases. It was way too convoluted, lots of dragging, dropping things onto the desktop, back into other systems, super clunky, and that was taking people away from the case management work that they needed to do, the important victim and witness engagement work that they needed to do, but also it was taking away from time for higher level work like legal case analysis and actually using the cognitive power of our staff to do the work that we need them to do, not getting tied up in administravia.
To become a public prosecutor, I think, has to be a chosen calling almost. Yeah. Sam, it is, when I've been involved in meetings with the team at OPP, they're kind of inspirational young people that go down this pathway. What impact do you think it's going to make or is already having after the last 6 months on their cognitive ability to do more or actually go home less stressed? What does it look like?
Yeah, so what it looks like is less clicks to access information. It's a much more simple user layout for the screens, and we put a lot of focus on the UX, on the design of the system, and I think that's really paid dividends. It's having automated workflow. It's for some of our admin staff, there's some robotic process automation included. There's some case smarts under the hood that makes suggestions around case allocations. So there's a lot of decision making that the system doesn't do, but prompts users to look at something and then make the decision themselves. So it's providing a lot of the background material, serving that up to people in just a nice, really easy to use interface. And for me, it's much less risk. The system was on premise. That was a big business continuity risk. There was also the risk that it was in such an old system that if we wanted to make any changes, and legislation can change and court process can change quite rapidly, for us to make any changes to the system, the old system, this is not Appian, there was such a huge cost and such a long lead time on things that the business processes in the system had just become so diverged from what the actual court processes needed to be. So there was a lot of thought that people needed to put into where am I in the system, what processes does this reflect? So we've been much better able to enshrine business process into the Appian system.
Yeah. The platform of government's not a static thing. Legislation does change.
Yep.
It changes based on what's going on in the world and locally in our community. How well equipped is the team now to actually pick up and deal with those changes, and how often can you drive new change into the platform?
Yeah, we can drive that pretty quickly. We're deploying very regularly. We're still on a sort of a 2-week sprint cycle.
Yep.
We went live in March, and we've been able to make significant change from just when the system went live to now. But we're also really able to make small scale changes, but also think about the bigger changes that might be coming to legislation or changes that we want to do internally to drive efficiency. We're now actually enabled to do those rather than thinking, how are we going to get our people to do this outside of the system? The system actually drives the standardization and drives the efficiency.
Nice. You are a significant part of the judicial environment in Victoria. How are we going with interfacing and interacting with the other parts of judiciary, police or courts?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're probably at a pretty early stage in that journey, but what the system has enabled us to do is really start the conversation with others across the sector around data sharing. We now get a regular upload of data from the courts, which we're able to ingest in the system. That happened in our old system, but in a very clunky, roundabout way, and we weren't using all the system data that was available. It's enabled us to have better data reporting, so when we speak to others across the system about the impacts of decisions or changes in legislation, we can go with much better evidence-based data to inform those conversations. And we're really hopeful that over time we can build a journey map for various participants in the criminal justice system, so that we can track accused or victims and witnesses through and reduce the number of data duplication points, but also reduce the number of touch points that they have to have with our system. As the OPP, we don't really have customers. We have victims and witnesses that we support, and it's really important that we do that in the most sensitive way. We don't expect them to have to navigate lots of information. And one of the things we're contemplating with Appian is building an external victim app where victims can go in and access and find out where in the prosecution process their case is up to, and just access information around, how do I get to court? When I get to court, what's it going to look like? Where do I sit? What do I need to do to the judge when I walk in? Do I need to bow? Do I need to, curtsy, doff my hat? So just really demystifying it, but serving it up in a way that makes sense to them in bite-sized chunks. They're going through potentially the worst day of their life in court. Yep. So we just need to make it as really easy for them as possible to access the right information at the right time and at a time that suits them.
It's really heartening. In my role, I get to talk to lots of executives who are driving outcomes across government for lots of different reasons. And obviously, we're talking about a very difficult subject here, the impact on a victim of a crime. And not only are we able to improve the public prosecutors' experience and reduce the stress, but also, reducing the overall impact and the longevity of that impact on a victim is a very lofty goal.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we're aiming for improved case processing time, which will help to provide resolution to victims and witnesses sooner. So yeah, there's a lot of really positive business outcomes that we can derive from the system. And I was saying to Cal and a few others earlier, when we went live, that was only really the very start of our journey. It was mainly to get us off our old legacy system, which was something that we needed to do. And now we've got this amazing low-code system that we can really do so much with. It's so exciting. And once we'd put it in the hands of users, the number of amazing enhancements that the users are bringing to us and saying, wow, we'd love it. We love the system, but we'd love it to do this, or can it do that? And before we'd gone live, there was some good engagement from people, but generally people were, oh, that system's coming in 6 months' time. We don't need to worry about it. But now they've got it. We've got such an amazing backlog of really great user stories that we can implement, which are going to make a huge difference both to our staff, but also to the to the community that we serve.
How is the adoption of the platform by the prosecutors compared to other, you've been around the block a little while, to other systems you've deployed? How did that feel as you were watching it those first few nervous days when you start to see the user counts climb? How did that look compared to previous experiences?
Yeah, it was a bit of a hair-raising time. I was pretty worried, and we went big bang. We cut over a long weekend because the court system can't be partially implemented. It's either got to be all in or all out. So I was pretty worried, but we did a lot of work with the user base even before we went live. We involved them very heavily in design workshops, and they got a lot of early indication of how the system was going to look. But it's very intuitive. Using the system, we designed it we were enabled through the capabilities of the system to design it in such a way that user adoption was very quick. I mean, change is always hard. I'm not going to say that there weren't people that said, I don't like this system, but everyone was using it. By the second or third day, I was getting reports from the team on the number of processes that were being run in it, and I was just so thrilled to see that it was, adoption was, really, high across the board. So yeah, the take up has been good, but I think what has helped is our information to the business about this system is your system. We want to hear from you about how it can be improved, because in our old system, and we had some great people working on that, and they did an excellent job in keeping it going for 30 years. But there were just things in it that we weren't able to do. Whereas with the new system, we were talking to users about, no idea is, too ridiculous or outrageous, too fanciful. We want to hear all your feedback, good, bad. We want to be able to fix things. And how the system looks now is not how it's going to look in 12 months, 3 years, 5 years. This is a a long journey. So I think that helped with the adoption, because previously when we've rolled out systems, it's here's a new system, that's it, get on with it. If there's something up with it, we can't fix it because it's not our system. We don't have the smarts or the capability to actually modify, extend, or enhance that. So I think that really helped with the adoption.
What was the team culture like? This is a loaded question because we were talking about it beforehand. I remember a number of Christmas pizza breakup drinks with this team. If you see anyone in this room with an Amicus t-shirt on, that was the project name. It was a great culture.
Yeah, it really was. And maybe just reflecting on that name, Amicus, for those that don't know, that's Latin for friend. We do love technology at OPP, but we also like, years old Latin terms. And that term Amicus really encapsulates the system. It's a friend to the users, but it sort of, it really reflects the the culture within the team. It was really, friendships were formed. There was great collaboration. We did literally all wear the same T-shirt. We got T-shirts printed up, celebrated every success. We shared everything that didn't quite go to plan. And we had a very open way of working. All team meetings were together. There was no them and us. It was just one team. We had open plan. Like you said to me, Kay, you'd go down and you didn't know who was OPP, who was Appian. We were just very enmeshed. And it was such an, for tech projects, and I've worked on a few, it was the most enjoyable project that I've worked on. And a great team, both OPP and Appian. It was, a real... everyone should be really proud of their efforts and their dedication to delivering a system for an organisation that can, has real purpose back to the Victorian community.
Yeah. How has the project been perceived by the broader Victorian government? Have you had feedback? You report up to a very important individual in the state, for example.
Yeah.
Any feedback or response to the fact that it was pretty much delivered on time when we said it would, and it's innovating at an increasing pace?
Yeah, so I think we haven't had a lot of attention, which I guess is good.
It's good, yes.
Yeah, having worked in government for many years, that's sort of what you want to be. You want to be not under the radar, but you don't want to have all the spotlight on you. We've demonstrated the system to the Attorney General, who's the minister that we report into, and there was positive feedback there. We've also been able to sort of show it to others across the system, and VLA, who are our counterparts. So for those that don't know, the OPP prosecutes, VLA defends the accused. VLA are also on the Appian system. So there's a lot of conversation between myself and counterpart at the VLA about things that are working really well, things that we want to sort of, that we might be able to learn from each other on tackling. So it's, I think it's been a really good conversation starter with people that we report up to, but also people that we work regularly alongside.
At Appian in the public sector team, we're enormously proud of the work that we do, and this is one of those examples where focusing on giving public prosecutors more time or energy back in their day to be empathetic to their victims and the witnesses involved, and finding time for, or reducing the time that a victim or a witness needs to be involved in the process is critical. Where in the next 6, 12, 18 months do you think the organisation is going to want you to head?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and like I said, when we went live, that was only the beginning. I think by current estimates, we've got almost 2 years of user stories in our backlog to build. Some of those, we won't be prioritising because other more important stuff will come along. But there's a lot that we want to do in terms of starting to use some of the AI capabilities in the system. We get a lot of material from police, from other stakeholders across the system. The complexity in the material that we handle, the volume of evidence in briefs, everything is just growing exponentially. So the complexity of the work is growing. So anything that we can put into users' hands to help summarize information, provide and suggest next steps for cases, produce automated emails, make suggestions on where matters should be allocated. Anything that we can do to create those internal efficiencies will be great. I love data and analytics as well, and I don't think we've yet fully leveraged the capability of the data smarts in the system, and that's something that I'd really like to be able to do, to put much more data into the hands of users and people leaders so that they're better informed on how their teams are tracking from a workload perspective, but also so that they get a sense of where people are traveling in terms of their own well-being. If we know that people have got too many cases of a particular sort, the system will be able to flag that to a people leader, and they can have a conversation or maybe make some reallocation decisions, because people shouldn't be doing too much of a particular type of case. So it's really about providing the information to the people leaders, but also giving some smarts to just your average common or garden user, so that they can get insights on their cases. They can see what types of cases that they've prosecuted that year, but they can also then start to tap into other cases that might have been prosecuted in the organisation with very similar comparable characteristics, and actually start to learn from case law and things that have gone before. It would be great over time if I'm a solicitor, I get allocated a case with a particular type of offending that isn't very common, and the system tells me when and where else this has been managed and directs you to it, so you can have a look. How did someone else handle this case? What were the novel legal issues in this case? Rather than having to search through that, which was almost like looking for a needle in the haystack when you don't even know what the needle looks like in our old system. Having that capability to just present all that to a user so that they can just get on with it, it's going to be really an amazing change for people.
What sort of difference do you think ultimately it'll make to the time that a given case will spend in the system? Daryl used to talk about wanting to speed up the process, the average time of 2 years. Where do you think it might be able to get to?
Yeah, I mean, it's
a $1 million question, I know.
It is, and it's a very interrelated system, so we can only influence certain parts.
So much.
But I think that we can cut down our case processing time and our case management time by around 25%, whether that means that the elapsed time of the court process is reduced, but our involvement in it, the amount of work that we need to put into it, I think could be reduced by about 25%. And then that work can be redirected towards the really important human stuff of talking to victims and witnesses, supporting bereaved family members, undertaking, like I said earlier, the sort of the case analysis, and really freeing people up to do the work that they have dedicated their professional life to do. People didn't become OPP lawyers to navigate clunky systems. They came to the OPP to serve the Victorian community and uphold the law in the community. So we can actually help people fulfill more of that purpose rather than making them glorified admin, which I think is a really significant step.
Yeah, I think it's amazing to see both in OPP and other of our clients, the opportunity to create more time for caseworkers. And if you look at our portfolio of customers in public sector, 50-60% of it is case management. This is a particularly complex environment that we work in. But leveraging things like the AI capabilities we have today, we can find more time for caseworkers to either build a bit of time back for themselves, or build a bit of time to create energy for them to have empathy, or in fact to actually have some more time to do the higher cognitive tasks that they need to do. It's all of that. It's difficult to put in a business case though.
Yeah.
So moving forward is going to be challenging, but I think success actually. Yeah. The success we've had in Amicus together is creating, I think, that opportunity for the next set
It does. The success breeds its own momentum. It gains confidence from the users. It gains confidence from my colleagues in the executive team to keep investing in the system and really making sure that it's optimised. But like I say, the journey has only really just begun.
Yeah. Sam, we are right on time. Love to thank you again, and love the broader Amicus team who are in the room for being here today. This is a sovereign platform for Victoria. It's something that will hopefully not impact any of you directly, but support someone have a better experience. So thanks again, my friend.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you.